The quiet crisis, how Canadian laws are shaking American states. Have you noticed it yet? A wave from Canada is shaking America in 2025, but almost no one is talking about it. Something unbelievable is happening. Quiet, little-known laws passed in Canada have pushed several U.S. states into a state of crisis. And this isn't random. It's the result of political tension, failed negotiations, and sharp trade policies. Now, 6 states are carrying the weight of these consequences. Some names you could probably guess, but others will leave you stunned. Why were these states hit first? And here's the kicker, don't miss the last one because it might just be your state. Minnesota, a silent economic earthquake. Minnesota doesn't just share a border with Canada, it has a lifeline, an economic bond with its northern neighbor. And right now, that bond is being pulled apart piece by piece. Let's start with energy. For decades, Minnesota relied heavily on hydroelectric power imported from Manitoba. But with Canada's new Energy Export Licensing Act, that steady flow is no longer guaranteed. Now, if Minnesota wants electricity, it has to apply for a brand new license, and those licenses are only given to partners with stable and cooperative trade relations. Unfortunately, the U.S. is no longer on that list. The fallout is brutal. Households and small businesses in northern Minnesota are staring down forecasts of a 15% to 20% spike in electricity costs. Then there's tourism. The boundary waters in Minnesota's North Shore used to draw tens of thousands of Canadian visitors every summer. But with Canada's Tourism Safety Act, large parts of Minnesota are now flagged with travel warnings. In just one season, Canadian bookings have dropped by 31%. Campgrounds, lakeside lodges, and outdoor gear shops are reporting their worst summer in over a decade. The digital economy is getting squeezed too. Advertising firms and tech agencies in Minneapolis once had a solid pipeline of Canadian clients. Those contracts are now evaporating, killed off by new tariffs and strict data regulations. Exports are the same story. Minnesota's steel, iron ore, and machinery once crossed the border without friction. Today, trucks are forced to line up for hours at inspection checkpoints, and entire shipments are rejected on the grounds of failing Canadian sanitary import standards. Minnesota is living through a silent economic earthquake. No gunfire, no political shouting matches, just laws quietly passed across the border, choking off one artery after another. And here's the chilling part, this is only the beginning. New York, an empire shaken. New York is a state with global influence, a leading center of finance, culture, and media. But even an empire can be shaken when Canada launches strategic blows. In the past, more than 3.5 million Canadians visited New York every year. But now, the Tourism Safety Act has changed everything. Certain areas of New York have been labeled as politically unstable. In less than a year, bookings from Canada dropped by 28%. It did not stop there. Under the Media and Tourism Shield Act, the Canadian government withdrew all promotional budgets for U.S. destinations, including New York. This means no more discounted tours or promotional packages. The financial sector, once thought to be safe, has also begun to feel the cracks. The digital platform tax has led Canadian regulators to gradually reduce their reliance on American data platforms. Wall Street companies are reporting that contracts from Canada are shrinking, especially in digital advertising and fintech services. And then there's trade in goods. New York exports more than $17 billion to Canada each year from electronics to processed foods. But now, many shipments are delayed, scrutinized, and even outright rejected under the label of failing sanitary import standards. For decades, New York has risen thanks to global connectivity. But now, Canada is no longer building bridges, it is building walls. Iowa, the agricultural heart under attack. A peaceful state is tied to the image of vast fields where farmers harvest corn and soybeans and raise pigs every day. But that very dependence on agriculture has turned the state into the front line in the silent trade war with Canada. For decades, Canada has always been one of Iowa's largest and most stable customers. They bought pork, corn, and soybeans, all flowing straight across the border. But then everything was overturned. With the sanitary import ban, shipments of pork from Iowa are now being returned simply because of additives and hormones in animal feed. The result? Thousands of pounds of pork piled up in warehouses, forcing farmers to accept losses on secondary markets. Not only pork, but corn and soybeans have also been placed under special scrutiny. New regulations on pesticides have caused many shipments to be judged as not meeting standards. Then comes fertilizer. Iowa has long relied on supplies from Canadian producers. But with the Energy Export Licensing Act, many fertilizer contracts have been cancelled, sending prices soaring. Production costs rise, profits shrink, and the ethanol production chain, so crucial in Iowa, has started to stall. This pressure spreads throughout the community. Packing plants cut back on workers, and seasonal jobs vanish. Iowa has never been loud, but its solid economy is now cracking apart piece by piece. Texas, the Lone Star swaying. The symbol of oil energy and the pride of the Lone Star. People here have always believed that their economy is strong enough to withstand any turbulence. But Canada has just proven the opposite. Even Texas can be pulled into the spiral of a silent trade war. The first weakness lies in the energy sector itself. Texas exports massive amounts of refined oil and liquefied natural gas, LNG. Canada used to be an important customer, but with the Energy Export Licensing Act, every energy import contract from the U.S. now requires a new license. As a result, many Texas refineries have lost contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. It's not just energy. Texas agriculture is also taking hits. Beef, citrus, and cotton, the state's key products, are now repeatedly blocked under the sanitary import ban. The next blow falls on tourism. Cities like Houston and Dallas have long welcomed thousands of Canadian visitors, especially the snowbirds. But under the Tourism Safety Act, Texas has been placed on a warning list. The result? Canadian visitors have dropped by more than 35%. Hotels, resorts, and car rental companies are all witnessing an unprecedented decline. In addition, Canada's automatic tariff trigger mechanism forces Texas businesses to stay cautious. Whenever the U.S. imposes tariffs on imports, Canada immediately retaliates. No one dares to sign long-term contracts, and that uncertainty strangles investor confidence. The Lone Star is now swaying in the middle of an economic storm. Michigan, a broken connection. The industrial heart of America, tied to the rhythm of the auto industry. For decades, this state and Ontario, Canada have operated almost in sync. But now that connection is being torn apart. The heaviest blow lands on Detroit and the auto industry. With the automatic tariff trigger mechanism, the first products targeted are auto parts, aluminum, and machinery, hitting directly at the lifeblood of Michigan's car production. The result? Contracts are cancelled, costs surge, and Canadian companies quickly turn to Europe or Asia to find replacements. Michigan's tourism industry is also being strangled. In the past, Canadians frequently visited Traverse City and the Great Lakes region. But with the Tourism Safety Act, these areas have been flagged as politically and safety unstable. As a result, cross-border trips from Ontario have dropped by more than 40%. Not only that, Michigan's agriculture is also taking hits. The state's apples, milk, and processed foods are continuously blocked under the sanitary import ban. Even technology is not spared. Companies in Ann Arbor once collaborated with Canadian businesses, but with the digital platform tax and strict data regulations, those contracts are gradually disappearing. For Michigan, this is not just an economic loss. It is also a sense of betrayal. The identity of being the gateway to Canada that Michigan once proudly held is fading quickly. a broken connection. The industrial heart of America, tied to the rhythm of the auto industry. For decades, this state and Ontario, Canada have operated almost in sync. But now that connection is being torn apart. The heaviest blow lands on Detroit and the auto industry. With the automatic tariff trigger mechanism, the first products targeted are auto parts, aluminum, and machinery, hitting directly at the lifeblood of Michigan's car production. The result? Contracts are cancelled, costs surge, and Canadian companies quickly turn to Europe or Asia to find replacements. Michigan's tourism industry is also being strangled. In the past, Canadians frequently visited Traverse City and the Great Lakes region. But with the Tourism Safety Act, these areas have been flagged as politically and safety unstable. As a result, cross-border trips from Ontario have dropped by more than 40%. Not only that, Michigan's agriculture is also taking hits. The state's apples, milk, and processed foods are continuously blocked under the sanitary import ban. Even technology is not spared. Companies in Ann Arbor once collaborated with Canadian businesses, but with the digital platform tax and strict data regulations, those contracts are gradually disappearing. For Michigan, this is not just an economic loss. It is also a sense of betrayal. The identity of being the gateway to Canada that Michigan once proudly held